If there are no other comments on municipal items other than the pollution control and flood reduction program, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. And we're going to move over to our presentation. Once again, I will open up the floor after the presentation for anyone who wants to speak about the items we're about to hear about. We bring up Charles Jordan, engineer from MS Consultants. We have a MS4 or Pollution Control and Flood Reduction Committee that's been working on this. Mr. Harvey is the chairman of that committee. Mr. Harvey, do you have any words you'd like to say prior to?
Yeah, I just wanted to brief the community and the residents that this federal mandate that we start taking care of our stormwater management and sediment control has been a long time coming. There are communities out there that have this plan or a similar plan in effect. At the beginning of this year, Deputy Mayor Arasenko appointed me to the MS4 committee along with Ms. Gatos. The committee was myself, Ms. Gatos, Tim Little, Bob Ratcher, Mr. Hugus, and Jamie Story. We worked on this, again, since the beginning of the year, staying by the federal mandates, the things that they required us to do. The permit has been received. It's approximately 26 pages long. There are all kinds of violation and penalties in there if we don't follow it step by step. So we worked very hard to make this program so we could do what we are required to do. And I can tell you the brief history is you have all saw the news when you see a small community flooded out after a heavy rain, and you see the FEMA trucks and the FEMA trucks there helping them out. Quite frankly, the federal government said it's time for the communities to take care of their stormwater management because they kept having to bail everybody out because they weren't investing into their infrastructure and mainly this stormwater management and sediment control. I've been researching this probably for 2 years. Mount Lebanon has had this program going for, I think, about 5 years. There are some other communities out there that have it. Any of you that have paid attention to the internet, the city of Pittsburgh is just starting to get into it, and that's really, really going to be interesting. I was talking to the gentleman from the municipal authority back there. The city's stormwater and sanitation sewer system is the same. Can't wait to see how they work that out. So anyway, moving forward, part of this program, or most of this program you're going to see, is designed and presented by MS Consultants, which is the stormwater consultant engineering firm that we retained because this gets pretty in-depth. Mr. Hugus and Mr. Story, I have to tell you, I think did a outstanding job, and unfortunately or fortunately, people don't like paying for things they can't see and touch, and that's what most of this is. And I think once you see the program, some of your questions are going to be answered, not all of them, but we tried to put a program together good enough that it would explain to you what's going on here. This is no small project, and our permit is for 5 years. We are 1 year into our 5-year permit, and so we are trying to move in a direction that would allow us to not only meet the terms and conditions of our permit, but improve Monroeville. And there are areas I'm sure that you're aware of that consistently flood. It's not just for those. And I will let Mr. Charles Jordan from MS Consultants take it from here. Hopefully, the program they have designed will answer a lot of your questions.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, my name is Charles Jordan. With me is Courtney Boyle, also from MS. And I guess we're waiting for the presentation to show up.
Joe, if you could place the PowerPoint up, and then just so everyone's aware, this PowerPoint presentation will be available on our municipal website tomorrow to be viewed at any time.
And there are copies.
And there's hard copies here this evening.
I believe Paul has more if we do need them. Okay. So the agenda for this evening is broken up into 3 parts. First is why a fee, how the fee works, and then questions. So Courtney will handle the first part of why a fee. Courtney, please.
Thanks, Charlie. So I'm going to talk through the effects of stormwater pollution, why we're in the situation that we're in, what the regulatory requirements are, and then the current program limitations and how we can get to where we need to be. So just from a 30,000 foot level, how we got to where we are now. Prior to any development, the hydraulic cycle, the way it worked when it would rain, is the natural landscape would handle the rain. The stormwater would manage itself through through the plant evapotranspiration or infiltration into the ground. Little water actually traveled across the land to our lakes, rivers, and streams. It was all infiltrated or went back up through the water cycle. So now we've added a lot of impervious area, our streets, our houses, all of the development that has come from that. And with that, we've also eliminated a lot of the native vegetation. So now that water, instead of going up or down, is going across these hard surfaces and in a lot faster, and that water needs someplace to go. So why does that matter? So that water is either going directly to the rivers, lakes, and streams, or it is going into the existing stormwater system. So when the stormwater system was developed, it was prior to a lot of this development happening, right? So now when it rains and it goes into the system and we've created all these extra hard surfaces, the system isn't designed to handle all of that flow necessarily. It also needs to be maintained. So when it's not all maintained and when the pipe size isn't right for the amount of hard surfaces, we get flooding, we get property damage, infrastructure damage, and that's all a public safety hazard. Additionally, this flow all goes to our lakes, rivers, and streams and brings with it all the pollutants that it's collecting along the way. The sediment and all of the oils and greases from the roads, that all goes into the rivers and degrades the rivers. This also impacts the drinking water sources downstream of every place this is happening. So consequences of that, you get murky rivers, flooding on the roads, problems with your infrastructure collapsing. So how do we manage this problem of stormwater? BMP's, best management practices, are used to manage stormwater. So these could range from engineered systems like detention ponds, bioretention, or they could just be simple practices where you are setting part of the riparian area along a stream, giving that back to the stream or river to allow for storage during these rain events. So that's creating kind of that space when it rains to let the water, to slow the water down, spread it out, soak it in. Oh, and I should mention, Monroeville has BMPs currently. Their stormwater ordinance requires BMPs be installed. However, that came after a lot of the development. So some of the development is handling, the newer development is handling the stormwater, but we have a lot of catching up to do to get everything back to where it's handling all of the flow that's generated from the development. And Monroeville is required by regulation to handle this stormwater. So from the Federal Clean Water Act through the state, which is PADEP, originally they were responsible for managing stormwater. They have since passed that down to the municipalities to handle because the burden was too heavy. So in Pennsylvania, DEP estimates 19,000 miles of rivers and streams that are impaired, and they attribute a lot of this to the stormwater runoff pollution. Municipalities, there's now about 950 in Pennsylvania that are required to have a stormwater management plan, and a lot of these also require this pollution reduction plan. So as Mr. Harvey mentioned, this is an unfunded mandate that we're required to meet. So MS4, this permit, what does that mean? That just stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, storm sewer. And there are 6 minimum control measures that are required by the MS4 permit. So this is quite an extensive program. There's a public education piece where you are required to educate the public on stormwater pollution and how to prevent it. Participation and involvement also on prevention of stormwater pollution. Minimizing illicit discharges, so going out and detecting those during dry weather, and then also coming up with a plan on how you remove those systems or those discharges. Stormwater runoff control, both during construction and post-construction. So those are your stormwater BMPs, which are managing the stormwater. So inspecting those, approving those, making sure they meet the state standards. And then pollution prevention and good housekeeping. So this also holds the municipality accountable by requiring them to meet the same standards that they hold everyone else to. So in addition to these MCMs, minimum control measures, 1 through 6, in the latest permit, which went into effect April 1st, there's also this 10% sediment reduction that's required by 2023. So, kind of going through what all of that, what is required of this permit, there are a lot of resources required to meet these permit requirements. Staffing, there's required training each year of city staff. You have to update the map anytime there's a new stormwater system that goes into place or BMPs. Planning and documentation, inspections of every BMP that goes in, inspections of your current stormwater pipes, cleaning them, and then also responding to emergencies. So anytime there's a flooding event or catch basins that need repaired, going out and being able to address those issues. So for Monroeville to be able to maintain and improve their $36 million in storm sewer assets, they need a funding mechanism, and that's where this user fee comes into play. So there's 68 miles of pipe over 4,000 storm sewer structures currently. With the current budget it's just not possible to maintain this or to meet the additional requirements that are laid out in this permit. So that's kind of the why, and Charlie's going to come back and talk about how it all works.
So the user fees are from Pennsylvania Act 68 that allows home rule charter communities to enact these user fees. And what these funds will do, they're going to provide funds to meet all the requirements of the MS4, which will include the capital improvements, operation and maintenance, all the regulatory compliance and reporting, also the engineering services and any planning and administrative costs. Now, these revenues, they will be placed in a restricted fund that will be used solely for stormwater purposes. So these funds will not be used for anything that is not related to stormwater. So how is the fee generated? So the first thing, it's based on the impervious area of the average home in Monroeville. And this allows you to calculate your equivalent residential unit. So the average home in Monroeville has a total of almost 2,400 square feet. That equals 1 equivalent residential unit, or ERU. And from there, the proposed fee amount which was developed, which is $10 per month rate for single-family residential properties, or 1 ERU. Anything that's not a single-family will be charged that single-family residential fee times the number of ERUs, which accounts for the amount of impervious surface of that parcel. So, for example, if a property has 23,850 square feet of impervious area, their fee will be 10 times the single-family residential fee, or that's also the 10 ERUs. And when you look at an example of a home, again, it is 1 ERU at $10 per month per ERU. It is $120 per year. And it's a single family rate is like a flat fee per year. If we were to look at a large retail example of the Monroeville Mall, it contains 7 parcels, almost 3.8 million square feet of impervious area. and their fee would be close to $223,000 per year. And hopefully this will show up better in the handout. But this lists the top 20 fee payers. Again, Monroeville Mall would be number one, followed by the municipality itself. The school district is in there as well. Also, UPMC and Forbes Health System. So it kind of gives you an idea of what some of the non-residential parcels will be counted for. And we did have one slide on billing, Mr. Mayor, so I apologize for that. The billing will be annual in January with the payment due by March 31st. With that does conclude our presentation now. If we entertain any
Okay.
questions, thank you.
Very good. So folks, now I'm going to reopen the Citizens Night portion for this specific topic.
Can I close a little bit? I just have a couple of comments.
Sure, yeah, Mr. Harvey.
One of the things that has occurred here because of time, and what I mean by that is there's just been so much to do. At the request of a bunch of residents that have called me, individuals, and some of the commercial establishments, we really wanted to get this announced a little earlier so they could try to get it in their budgets for next year, and we didn't make it for a lot of them. And so there's been a request to go out that I'm going to propose to council that I think will ease the first year's fee for not only residents but for businesses alike. I have a little bit of homework to do on that, and I hope to be able to announce it Tuesday. But time restraints are so tough and tight. I have to make sure that this stuff my ideas are legal. So bear with me. I'm working on it. We really are trying to make this as painless as possible. I don't know that that's capable of doing that, but we understand this new fee is a cost to everybody, and that is one thing about it is it's everybody. So there are several issues that I'm working on as far as ease of payment, at least for the first year, and some other issues that I hope maybe I can announce Tuesday. I just can't do them here because I don't have everything put together yet. I don't want to give you a false impression. Know that I'm working on it. We're working on it. So that's.
Okay, and to Mr. Harvey's point, we will not be voting on this evening. This is a work session, and it is a citizens' night. We are seeing this presentation from the engineering from the engineer tonight as well, and there are things that can be modified or changed as we move through this process. And as Mr. Harvey mentioned, it's going to be something that will impact not only everyone or every developed property in Monroeville, but every community and borough municipality in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Every community will be facing this that has impervious surfaces in their community. They have developed property. So we'll go back to our Citizens Night for this topic, and we'll start back up at Kay Wentling, please.
I guess I'll stand up here. I just have
Yeah,
questions.
and what we'll do is you'll sign, you already signed in, if you just state your name for the record. What we typically do with all Citizens Night, I failed to mention it earlier, we try to keep to a 5-minute time limit. We hope to get your questions answered, your comments addressed in the 5-minute period. However, there is another opportunity before Tuesday's meeting to speak on this same subject matter, and certainly your council people, myself, the manager, would be happy to follow up with you after the meeting as well to discuss any of these issues. So the floor is yours. If you just state
Okay.
your name for the record,
I have
please.
all these questions. I don't know where to start. One of the components of this program is pollution control.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
State your
I'm
name
sorry,
for the record.
Kay Wentling.
Thank you.
And I was thinking I would come tonight and there would be some more specifics about this plan. I mean, I understand the need for it. I understand we have to pay for it. And we're all going to share the amount that's owed for the
process and everything that we're doing. But there's no specifics yet about what's going to happen. I mean, what's the plan to control pollution?
Ma'am, may I try to answer that? Uh-huh. Until the ordinance is passed, it is crazy to present what we have as a proposed project list because it could all change. And so the example would be the flooding at the bottom of Logan's Ferry Road. Every time we get a heavy rainstorm, we could say to you, we intend on fixing that. And by the time this is all said and done,
Okay, so we're just in a very initial stage then. Is that
well,
right?
the things that it's going to do is going to put people on stormwater management. If you would see the pictures that we saw of the entrance to our stormwater pipes coming out in our 32 detention ponds, it's ridiculous. Those have to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
The storm sewers that are collapsing have to be cleaned up. I don't know if you've ever tried to drive down on William Penn and get through the Thompson Run Road Tunnel after a heavy rain, because you can't do it. And we are somewhat guilty. Our forefathers were really guilty because nobody paid attention to it. And basically, the federal government said enough is enough.
Right.
And now you have to pay attention to it.
But to your point, I mean, what Mr. Harvey's talking about, there'll be projects identified. I mean, I think we all probably know of some trouble areas in the municipality where there is flooding. So those are the type of projects that are identified in this process. And then repairing the storm sewers or storm drainage facilities, the detention ponds. So those are the kind of things that are going to be repaired and addressed.
Mayor,
Okay.
maybe our engineer can address that too.
So, as part of this project already, there's been a pollution reduction plan that has been submitted to DEP. So that's the planning stages of this. It's thinking through what BMPs we can use and what the sediment reduction is for each of them. So it's not that nothing has been done, it's just that it really needs to be more ironed out and figured out,
Okay.
you know, within the budget, how do we get the most bang for our buck? And then we'll refine those designs as we move forward.
Okay, and let's say I would be interested in following that more closely. How would I do that?
We'll have it all posted on our website. And is the 20-page document, is that on our website currently, Mr. Hugus?
I don't believe it is.
You mean the permit?
Yes.
It is not. I mean, I looked. It's not.
Okay, well, those are the kind of, to answer your question, yes, those are the kind of things that I think we need to do is get a section on our website, which I believe we already have a section dedicated to this. And I think we just need to add as much information as possible as we go through this, and we'll be
now-
doing it. So to answer your question, our municipal website's the best way
All
to
right.
find out the information.
There is a page here about the newer developments have some protections in place when they were built lately, you know, compared to the old ones. And are they going to have to pay this fee too?
Yes.
I mean, if
and
they've already done that.
The answer
part
is
of
yes,
it.
but the other thing they have to do is new developments have to meet the MS4 requirements.
So
when
they
they-
don't all do that, that already, they don't do
They
that.
didn't.
Okay.
They do now.
Okay. How long will this fee be assessed? And will it be raised later maybe, or could it be lowered once everything's built and
Well,
fixed?
that's the tough question that we debated on ourselves. Now, being a reasonable person, I think what you will hear is it's definitely going to last through the remaining 4 years of the permit. We don't know how fast we're going to catch up on all the things that are required to do of us. Are we going to be able to complete it in 4 years? Are the federal government going to add something in year 6? It's a very difficult question to answer.
Okay.
But the fee itself will be part of the budget every year. It'd be part of the fee schedule in the budget annually.
I
So
will
it
assure
could
you
be-
this.
Could be addressed every year.
The money collected from MS4, as they said in the presentation, has to go into a separate MS4 account.
Right,
And it
right.
will be audited. So it can only go towards stormwater and pollution management.
Right. And there's no other source of funding at all?
None.
No.
You know,
None.
other than a fee or some kind of
The
assessment?
federal government made this regulation unfunded. That means
Yeah.
you have to do it. Or we have to do it.
Well, let's say I live in a small house and my neighbor has double the size of my house, roof and everything, impervious surface. Do I still have to pay the same amount as that
We
person?
used an average of the homes in
Every-
Monroeville.
Yeah, there was 100 homes, Paul, I don't remember how many he used to come up with the average, so the residents get charged the
One-
same.
Well,
Yes.
recently, most of my family didn't leave the area, but they moved out of my house, so I'm there by myself. And I'm getting all these nice letters from the utilities saying, wow, you're doing a great job saving on electricity and on gas. Well, that's because nobody's there with me. But let's say I put rain barrels at all the gutters and, all the downspouts, and I didn't have that much water running off my property. Could I save, get a discount? To do some way that I could save money on the fee?
There is, currently they're working on, there are several discount things you can do. I am not promising you on how much that's going to discount you. It depends on
Right.
the actions you take.
It's
And
worth,
I,
it's
I
worth
understand.
exploring.
I still want to accept the fact that I drive on the roads and we need culverts and we need things to let us drive over all these streams and everything. So that's part of it too. I understand that. And also, I was looking at the list of all the different people and how much they would pay. Municipality of Monroeville's up there, Gateway School District, even the county. So that could affect my taxes too in those areas. Maybe a little, but still, that's another expense.
Well, the only thing I could tell you is the gentleman from the school district was here, and he had been at the presentation 2 years ago, and he said that he's been carrying it in his budget, waiting for
Oh,
this to
okay.
happen.
All
So
right.
it was only going up a little bit. Now, that was said directly from the gentleman from Gateway School.
Okay, so some people
government's-
had the foresight to look ahead.
Correct, because the top 20 were notified 2 years ago of this process getting started. It's just taking us a little bit longer to get the permit in place to be able to actually move forward. But the top 20 were all notified 2 years ago
Okay, well, that's good.
that it was coming.
Right. That was good for.
And as you know, Mount Lebanon has, like he mentioned, has had their in place 5-6 years. Plum's been in place for 4 years.
Now, one last thing. Every time it rains really hard, I look around my area where I live. I live down toward Turtle Creek, Bellwood Avenue. And we have a lot of drain sewers and, where the water collects or the debris collects. If we could get people to clean those off, that would help maybe.
This is going to do that.
This will help that a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That is county though.
Yeah, that one is.
It's going to do
Yeah,
the
so
That one is county. but
That's a county and
yes.
state issue. We always have to worry about what's our responsibility versus the county and the state. Ms. Olszewski, did you have other comments regarding this?
Yes. I didn't address any of this initially. First of all, I'd like to make a request, if we could, there would be a postponement in the voting next week. I felt that there was insufficient notification to especially business owners. I've talked to a lot of business people and business owners in the municipality, and many of them were not aware because they're absentee.
We've had numerous programs for the businesses, and they got mailed out, and they attended the meeting here.
Correct.
So there's been numerous businesses come up here.
But there are a lot that haven't, too. I mean,
We've notified them, we can't make them come.
But to your point, I would ask council the same thing as far as
I'm just,
perhaps tabling it on Tuesday to give us more time to discuss, but.
And there are so many other open issues that were just discussed by Mr. Harvey that we didn't have answers to or that were coming and were considered. And
You're right.
I think that we should know all the facts first before it's voted on. You have a plan in place or some ideas you're thinking about. Can we hear them? Or
Plan for what?
I don't know, you had indicated that you couldn't talk about certain things tonight because you didn't know if they were legal or not. and you
Right,
had
which is
some
why I was
ideas.
asking council to table Tuesday.
The voting?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear you say that.
Just on the ordinance.
Correct, on this stormwater management system.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a
I just-
reasonable request, and I would agree with you. And I think as we go through it, we're going to have probably maybe more questions than answers.
Yes.
And
And I felt that there were 3 significant areas that were showing some hindrances, significant areas. One was resale properties. Of growth and expansion. And also, we've been talking month after month, year after year, for many, many years about attracting new businesses and ownership. And I think with these kind of fees, we're going to kind of defeat that
Yeah, I
purpose.
just
still
said
get
that every
everyone.
borough and township has to do it.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand
every-
that.
Where are they gonna go?
Do you understand too that some of these fees that are being imposed on some of these churches and schools and all that
Yes, we
too?
do. We talk to
That
them.
there will be, that's going to affect closing of some of them too. You know, some of them don't have the monies to do that. The residents are going to be hit quadruply possibly. Not only are we going to have to pay as a residential tenant owner,
Your proposal is
then,
what?
I don't know. You're on the committee.
That's
You
what we've
you
been
have
discussing.
proposals,
But I'm
right?
trying to tell you what I think the answer is. To meet the federal mandate, to meet our 26-page permit.
I
So we
understand
don't
that.
get $133,000 fines.
I understand that.
Which one
And
community got
Are
charged?
we going to divulge the repairs that are necessary?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That,
Oh, yes.
that's part of the whole program
yes.
that I think should be
It'll all
known
be-
to the public.
It'll all be public knowledge as that gets developed, just like
And
how our road repair paving
Many,
schedule
many of
gets,
the
is a public
people
document.
don't have computers, you know, or phones, cell
They'll be
phones and things
discussed
like
at our
that.
budgets, they'll be at, just as we discuss our road paving programs, just the mayor said. They will be discussed at the meetings.
But it'll all be public information, it'll be part of public documents as far as.
Are you
people
going to
not-
publish it anywhere that people could pick it up or find out? I mean, a lot of people that I've talked to, they don't have computers.
Well,
There's
they
some
could
people
probably
in
come
here
up
that
here,
don't.
we could probably
We
have
have
it
our-
printed.
Yeah, they can get
Something.
hard copies at the municipality, probably at the library, they
meeting,
can get
Something, yeah.
Come to a meeting, it could be on the agenda.
Something.
Yeah.
at the senior
anything.
center if there's a document.
And, you know, many of us are aware that there have been issues in University Park, Glenwood, Stroshine Road, Alpine Village, Haymaker. You know, we can go on and on and on and on.
Yes, we
And
can.
there have been numerous ones over the last 15 years. And even going back as far as 2007, Mr. Harvey was an advocate for this back then when we were doing the Growth Alliance and things of that nature. And we never took enough of measures even back then to even help, you know, with some of the expenses that we're seeing today. If we would have, I know that some municipalities just working on highway projects across the state, even in Murraysville, back in 1994, they were requiring on-site water detention systems and underground maintenance systems, stormwater systems, and so on. You know, we didn't do that in Monroeville.
But you know what the
for
problem
long-
is that the commercial business put in what you required, and what was out there in the street couldn't handle it.
I understand that.
Okay, well, that's
I
what we
know
gotta
that.
fix.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of it is. But if they would have required more on-site stuff,
They're
you
still going to,
wouldn't have had as
Murraysville,
much.
they're still going to have to pay as well.
Oh, I know they are. Yes, I understand that.
Okay, their fee didn't go
But-
away just because they had done some,
I understand that.
It-
okay,
Because they use the roads and different things like everybody else does.
correct.
But
And they
they're
still have water runoff.
That's right.
Correct.
And we are going to be guaranteed that these funds will be allocated for Monroeville.
Federal.
Correct.
Only, yes.
Okay, because, you know, once things are put into a cog, sometimes,
He's-
No. They assured us that we're gonna be
Okay.
audited.
okay,
Yeah.
that's, I want to be sure of that, because that's something that I think is very important,
It is going to be.
you know. And there was one last thing. Detention ponds have been something that have been required by the municipality for a long time. But many of them, as we saw off of Haymaker Road when they were doing the development at Washington Point or whatever it was, that the condos, the Ryan condos that were put up, that caused a lot of that flooding down to Sheets and
Those
all
are the
that.
things
And
that
those
we addressed.
detention ponds were never, they were never monitored properly.
They will be now.
They will be.
And we
They will be
have
now with this
had
program.
numerous problems.
They will be
numerous
with this
problems.
program.
And shouldn't have the developer been held liable for some of that? You know, there were many instances over the years where they weren't. And I think that some of these funds could have been acquired, you know, over the process.
Hindsight's 2020. We're
Well,
trying to fix it now and move
They were
forward
brought up
properly.
even back then, and nobody did anything.
Well, I wasn't
Well,
here then,
they
and I'm
ignored
here
it.
Go
now,
back
and
to
this is
the-
what we're doing.
Commercial developments and even residential developments, as you mentioned, back then were allowed to put in with either
Oh, I
no
know
or low
Glenwood was
standards.
and all that, and I lived in
So-
Glenwood for 14 years. I understand that
I'm
stuff.
just saying, so we're paying the piper.
But the ones on Haymaker weren't built that long ago, and there were items that were brought up numerous times at the meetings. I was here at the meetings, I saw it. I participated
Okay, I
in
won't
it.
argue with you on
you know.
that or even discuss it because I wasn't.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying that I know that there were, and there were other instances too, that those
All I'm
things
trying to
weren't
do is fix it.
addressed. So I agree. And how was you said there was an average taken in Monroeville?
Yes,
For the surfaces?
yes.
They came
That
up
was
with
showed
that
in the
3,200?
presentation. Yes.
Who did that?
Our engineering
Engineering.
Our
department.
engineering?
Yes.
And how did they do it?
Mr. Story,
Aerial
if you could
or-
explain the GIS system.
Oh, they did GIS,
Yes.
aerial?
Yeah, so we have a GIS system, which is Geographic
Yeah,
Information
I
System.
use it all the time.
Yeah, but not
I'm
everybody-
familiar
not
with it.
Maybe
Everybody
everyone
knows.
else doesn't understand what it is.
So it's basically a computerized map, kind of like you'd see on
Yes.
Google Street View or Google Maps these days. So we have a polygon that represents every house in Monroeville. We tallied up the square footage of every one of those polygons for
Took
every
an
single
average?
family home and averaged all of those.
All right, okay, thank you.
Excuse, I have a question. Are we
Sure, Duncan.
asking to drop, to table, these motions for next week?
That can be considered on Tuesday. I think that's what,
So that would be both motions,
Not
the
tonight.
motion and
Not
the
tonight.
ordinance?
but not tonight.
No, but I heard that you guys said, I guess the majority wants to table these, possibly? Both? That would be both, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's news to me. I mean, I just heard here, as the public has, that you're possibly thinking of tabling it. I just asked the question.
Yeah, and I have some proposed changes to give to you
Okay.
because of that.
Yeah, it was just news to me. All of a sudden, everybody knew but me, and I kind of am still confident.
I didn't know.
That's why I asked.
I didn't know.
Irregardless, go ahead.
All right, very good. Mr. Wright.
Council, mayor, solicitor, and manager, thank you for talking to me, first of all. My name is Jay Wright. I have a couple questions. In their proposal, there's no map of the storm sewers. Can we get a copy of the map of the storm sewers? Have we mapped them?
They are mapped, yes. Jay, they are mapped.
Can I come up and get one tomorrow?
It's probably gonna be like a polar bear in a snowstorm because the size of the map with all the storm sewers, and you're not really gonna see anything. We'd have to break it down into several pages. So,
You guys have done it for me before, Paul.
well, it's not gonna happen tomorrow, I can tell you
When
that.
do you want me to come get it?
We'll let you know,
Within a week, maybe?
possibly.
Okay. Second, if it's okay, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Harvey?
Go ahead.
How much money are we taking in right now, according to the numbers you put down? How much money a year is a municipality going to take in on the storm sewers?
On the MS4 project?
Yes. For the businesses in the community, all of it. What is the total amount of money?
If it's,
Approximately 3 million.
3 million? How much are we going to spend a year?
I think I answered that earlier. There's no way to tell. I mean, we have a budget for vehicles, backhoes, trailers, buildings, manpower, and then the projects, the 32 municipally owned detention ponds, the flooded areas. I mean, it's very difficult to come up with a definitive budget
They're going to be very close to what we
Right.
take in.
right now.
Okay, roughly, do we have a finish line on this project?
No.
No.
Okay, so we have to roll over the permit, if I'm correct, every 5
Correct.
years, am I correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
That costs $500.
Okay.
That's, that, according to the state regs you guys
Okay.
are quoting.
Okay, well, yes, but
Okay.
again, what we don't know is on year 6, what are they gonna add? We were fortunate that, like Mount Lebanon's doing it now, and along comes the federal government that says, oh, by the way, you've gotta do this sediment reduction control, which increased the cost of business dramatically. Mount Lebanon till today hasn't had to account for that. Now they either gotta raise their fee or somehow make up for it. We fortunately got informed about it prior to doing this, so that is built into that $10.
Well, Mount Lebanon, I also call Mount Lebanon. Mount Lebanon, the only thing they've done for 5 years is fix curbs.
I don't,
Well, that's what they told me.
That's
I
their
talked to them
business.
twice.
That's not ours. That's
Pardon me?
their business. That's their business of what they decide to spend their money on.
Oh, Linda, I'm not against it, but I'm just
Okay,
saying, we
I'm,
use
I'm,
Mount
'cause I'm
Lebanon
not
all
quite
the
sure why
time.
you're saying that.
They've
Mount
had
Lebanon's
5
a good
years.
example
But-
because they've been doing it for a while. They researched this, in my opinion, researched this and put it together properly. What they're doing with it, I mean, I don't know if the feds are going in there and agreeing with what they're doing. I don't have any idea.
Okay, one more basic I don't know if you can answer one question. What work are we gonna do on the storm sewers? I know we're gonna do retention ponds. What other work are we gonna do?
Have you seen
Well,
some of
any-
the pipes
project.
under the ground?
Anything.
Pardon me?
Have you seen some of the piping underground, some of the storm sewer?
Yes,
pipes?
ma'am, I have.
Have rotted away, have broken?
I'm not
they-
arguing, we need to work on it. I'm not arguing about
Yes.
that. I'm asking, what are we gonna cover with this money?
But
Anything
those
related to.
those
storm-
type of repairs, and,
Those-
and to answer your question, they probably also, what people want to know is that these projects will be made public once we identify what the project, we have projects that are already identified. We all know trouble spots in the area where there's flooding, where there's maybe potential like landslide, where there's some erosion. So the engineering department has a list of bad spots. Those are the type of things that'll be worked on.
This,
And there may be new things that come up as rain events occur.
this crew will also be doing maintenance on what they were saying as far as like the storm openings in the roads and cammering the storm line on your street and
Yeah, they have to do
determining
that.
what kind of repairs needed. Do they have to dig up the whole road? Can they just replace a section of the pipe? Can they put a sleeve in?
No, I know the repairs for the pipes and stuff. I'm curious, are we gonna use this money to pave roads or anything else at all?
Anything that is done to affect the stormwater management, we can replace with this money. Meaning, if a road is dug up to replace a storm sewer, the road can be put back to normal using this money.
Just that section.
Okay, but we're
And
not.
curbs.
We have to have had worked on that road for the storm sewers,
Yes.
right?
For this purpose.
Okay. Last question, second last. Why are we starting a whole separate department when all the other boroughs use our public works? All of them use their own public works departments. Plum does, Mount Lebanon does, I think Charleroi or another one does. They all use their public works department. Why are we starting a whole new department?
There's a couple reasons, and one of them is that it is much easier to justify and track that money at audit time to say, these people, this equipment, and these expenses have all come out of MS4, and that's all they're gonna be used for. That's what they're gonna be paid with, MS4 money, not municipal operating budget. If you're telling me that Mount Lebanon, and they didn't, but if you're telling me they do it now, they figured out a new magical way to figure out every hour that guy puts into MS4, because that's the only thing they can use the money for. So if the guy goes out there and does something not related to MS4, they can't pay for him out of that money.
I understand. I ran a couple companies. I understand how you budget workers. I
Okay,
really
well, I'm
do.
just saying that we have enough work to keep 4 to 6 people going.
Mr. Harvey, I'm not arguing with that. My only thing is, when you
The
start a
road
whole new department,
The road department has enough work to do without worrying
More
about,
than enough.
but you have managers already. Now you're gonna have to hire new managers, you're gonna have to train new managers, new people, new union contracts, new health, everything has to cover it. So you're gonna spend a ton of money on extras.
not extras. The same people would get paid the same thing.
You'd have to hire in public works if you were even
Well,
going to
sure.
do it that way.
Well, you hire, but
So what's that-
you wouldn't
what
have to
would-
hire
where
as
would the
many
extra
people,
cost
Linda.
be?
You wouldn't hire as many people.
Oh, yes, you would.
Yeah,
They
then
have to
who's
be
gonna do the
mandated
paving
only for the
projects?
stormwater
Pardon me?
management.
If you have
That's
the
it.
road department doing this, who's gonna do the paving project?
Correct.
You hire 5 more people. You don't have to hire a whole new
Well, we
department.
don't-
We are.
What's the difference?
Well, the great deal difference is the money and the spent.
Well,
When
the
you
difference-
hire a whole new department,
The
you're gonna
difference is
spend a
that the
ton.
MS4 department can work on MS4 projects and be paid for out of MS4 money, freeing up road department money, so we can add people to the road department because they are understaffed.
Let me ask you a question. Mr. Little, what does the Public Works Department's budget right now?
Oh, let's see, I'd say it's, I'd have to look in the budget, probably about 7, 8 million.
Okay, you're gonna spend another 3 for this, according to the things I think, 1.7 for labor and other for fees and stuff. So I don't know it all, but I'm just asking.
I don't have it memorized either.
Okay, well, I'm just asking, because it's a strange thing when you start a whole new department. And that department's gonna be there forever.
I
That's
would
all.
guess. I would guess for a long time. But we want to not only increase the Public Works Department's capabilities with giving them more manpower to do the things around the municipality that they've been struggling to get completed, that have nothing to do with MS4, nothing to do with stormwater management.
Okay, I
Today,
disagree, but I'm allowed, okay?
Jay, today the Public Works Department is using their budget to take care of the stormwater issues. When this is in place, the MS4 program will be doing that. So therefore, some money will be freed up in order for Public Works to not have to do the stormwater. They'll be able to put those funds into what they have to do as far as Public Works.
I know it's a strange question, Tommy, but is there any way to know roughly how much money we're freeing up?
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that.
Okay, I'm just, it's.
Yeah, I don't have
Just
any
asking.
idea.
You could look in the budget where it states for stormwater management right now.
Well, I think you don't have very much in there, I don't think,
No.
right now.
About
No, I think-
28.5.
If I remember
I think
correctly.
there's
28.5,
one
it
or
was
two,
showed on
but
the, it was showed on the slide.
not much.
Okay, I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Wright?
I didn't mean to get you all excited, but I thank you all very much.
No, we had some good
Thank you.
questions. And if I could just real briefly, I don't know if it's a question for Mr. Ratcher or Mr. Little. Mr. Wright brought up a point as far as this ordinance. Is there a way, or a way to, whether we tie it to the permit process where the ordinance gets reevaluated, if, I don't know if you want to call it a sunset type clause or something where the ordinance has to be reevaluated X amount of years, or can we do that, or is it something?
You can do it if you wish to do so. You can put a sunset provision in there, which basically says that after a certain period of time that you would pick, let's say like maybe the first permit period, that the ordinance would be invalid after that period unless the then council renewed it. So that's, yeah, that can be done.
That'd be
That
something
can be done with any legislation you pass.
Well, perhaps it's something for council to consider as we move forward on this. Mr. Brown, Jim Brown, please. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate you coming back in this section of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. My name is Jim Brown. I'm from Alpine Village here in the municipality of Monroeville.
Welcome.
And I have some things I wanted to discuss with you, but I had a couple questions come up as a result of the engineer's presentation. And if it's okay, I'd like to direct my questions to those engineers. Okay.
She just ran to the ladies' room, so I hope if you need to ask her, you
Okay, well,
But Charlie may be able to
you're
answer.
stuck. All right.
If you just, speak forward into the mic, and then they'll have.
First question is, on the slide, I don't know what page it is, they're not marked, but under MS4 requirements, it talks about the municipal separate storm sewer system, the control measures, and at the bottom of the page, it says 10% sediment reduction required by 2023.
Correct, yes.
Okay. My question is, how is this measured, and how is it verified?
I think, Paul and I have been questioning this with the DEP, and the answers that they give us are really kind of, I don't know, are you, am I kind of?
Vague.
Vague, yes. It's very vague on how you do that. So,
Yeah, that's the answer I expected to hear. I've taken a little self-imposed crash course in MS4 here, and reading some of the legislation, and spent some time on the DEP website, and yeah, it is vague. And it's bothersome that we're going to be held to a standard that is really not defined
Well, do
or
you not wanna meet
measurable
that standard?
or verified. How do you know?
Do you not want to meet that standard?
Well, it's not a matter of not wanting to meet the standard. It's just I think
Well, I think
a
we should do
standard
better
needs
than
to
the
be
standard.
measurable, and it needs to be verifiable.
I think we should do better than the standard.
Well, Jim, to answer your question, I think that we have the onus to prove to the DEP quantitatively that we have done our 10% reduction.
Well, what is the current percentage of sediment in our stormwater?
I think that The pounds per year calculated in the pollution reduction plan was 906 pounds per year.
There was 801,000.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry,
pounds.
801,000, yes.
Okay, so you actually have a number then
Yes,
that
there's
you
a
can
physical
shoot
number.
for.
We had to submit that information with our DEP application.
Okay. Okay.
So to answer Mr. Brown's question, we just have to reduce 80,000 pounds a year, 10%.
You have to do 10% of the 801,000.
By 2023.
Correct.
And we have to demonstrate that.
That's correct.
But to your point,
There's no approved process for demonstrating that or verifiable mechanism for that.
we would probably
So-
have, if we got approached or we got audited by the
Well,
DEP.
I think
we would have-
Courtney's back,
Yeah,
and she could probably help you with that,
And
because
they also gave
you
us
see if the
a
MS4
price per pound. Courtney, can
The
you speak on that?
DEP has specific reduction percentages that they have assigned to each BMP. So I'm assuming that this is through research results that they've established these. They are pretty standard in the industry to give a percent reduction. So for each BMP that is implemented, you will calculate what the reduction is based on the area and then show that you're overall meeting that 10% reduction.
Okay. And I had just one other question. On the top 20 fee payers chart, at the bottom, it gives an anticipated amount of revenue that would be collected after the first year. What is the estimate for incoming revenue with all other payers considered, not just the top 20? Yeah, municipal.
Municipal.
Yeah,
Keep saying that word, borough.
I know. Everybody says
A
borough.
little
We haven't been
over
a
3
borough
a
since
little over 3 million.
1974.
A little over 3 million,
3 million?
yes.
Okay, so 3 million total is.
A little over 3 million
Not
total,
over the 5 years. Are you?
each year,
3 million per year?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
What is our total that we need to reach? 36 million?
Well, the price per pound for the sediment reduction was set at, from the DEP, at, what was it, Paul?
it's $47 per pound. The calculation comes out to, it's going to, according to the DEP, it will cost $7.5 million per year.
Per year for us to do what they're asking us to do.
So you might be asking us, how are we going to do that? Well,
When we're only bringing in 3, and they're saying the sediment reduction alone should be costing us 7.5.
Okay. And so the top 20 fee payers are going to be covering a third of the income.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that information. Now, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to actually get to the point that I was prepared to address tonight.
Go ahead.
In reviewing the ordinance that you have on the agenda for Tuesday night, it discusses the fee for that you're looking to impose. I'm not here to oppose the program per se. I understand that this is a mandatory, this is something that you are inheriting, it's being pushed down from the federal level via the state. So it's inevitable, and I'm not here to oppose the inevitable. However, the way this fee structure is set up, I sort of look at, as a taxpayer, I look at it as, I'm about to get hit in the head with a hammer. I can't stop that from happening, but I would like to have a say in what that hammer looks like, okay, how big it is and what kind it is. So the fee that, the fee structure, the fee program that is proposed, my problem with it is it's not tax deductible, okay? At least with property taxes, real estate tax, that is tax deductible, okay? People pay real estate tax, and they can, and for people who itemize their taxes, they own their properties free and clear, they can take that as a deduction, okay? This fee, since it's a set standard fee, it is not going to be tax deductible. And so I was here to ask council to maybe explore, give consideration to coming up with a fee structure that is tax deductible. And you can do that basically 2 ways. One, well, the easiest thing to do, of course, is to raise property taxes. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I'll
okay?
tell you the negative to that is that right off the bat, you have tax exempt properties around Monroeville that would no longer have to pay the fee that cause giant amount of stormwater, like the hospitals.
That is true, but you know what, that's an issue, local governments have been battling that for decades, trying to figure out how to get nonprofit organizations
But
to
I'm
cough
saying
up
that
money.
this is something that they
And-
directly affect. There's a lot of stormwater coming off those hospitals' properties and that come down into the
Yeah,
roads.
they're part of the cause, so therefore they should be part of the solution.
Well, and.
Mr. Brown, do you
and I
have
also-
do you have a suggestion?
Yes. Yes, if, it can be done if the fee that you want to charge for this is correlated with the value of the property. Okay, for example, if your fee was based on a percentage of the assessed value of the property, then it becomes tax deductible, because the rate's going to be variable,
Now,
you
the
know.
problem with that is that everybody would appeal what you said their property value is,
Right,
But they can do that anyway.
Yeah, but not if there's a flat $10 fee.
right.
Yeah, but I think you're going to get legal challenges to this fee.
And then you're suggesting that would take it away from nonprofit organizations.
You know,
It would be
the
on
battle with
commercial
nonprofits has been
businesses.
going on for decades, and I don't see it ending anytime soon, okay? I guess to a certain extent, you got to surrender that. Because that nonprofit status, that tax-free status, that is granted to them at the state level and by the federal government. There's nothing you can do about it at your level. You're being made the bad guys, okay? Because you're going to go out and you're going to tax these nonprofit entities, and they're going to beat you up for it. And the state and the federal government is going to stand on the sidelines and not say a word. They're not going to come to your
I
defense at
think
all.
most people are glad that everybody that contributes to stormwater has to pitch in
Yeah.
for it.
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
I don't think
Because
$120 is that
I want
much
the-
on your tax
I want the tax
return?
deduction.
At the
And
$120?
I think there's a lot of, and I think there's a
You think
lot
that's
of,
going to change your taxes that much, $120?
you know what, it's small, but it's a residual benefit
That's
that
only
you
if
don't
you're-
get with the fee. You know, so,
I can't even get a health care deduction.
well, the IRS says that, I have some material that I printed out, and I'd like to turn it over, if I could, to Mr. Ratcher. And if, you know,
If you can hand it
want
in
to
to
take
me,
the time
and
to talk to a tax attorney. But I understand that you've got to collect revenue. You're gonna need to collect a lot of revenue. But I just think there's got to be a way to make it tax deductible. There's got to be a residual benefit for the people who are going to be footing the bill. I don't know that a flat fee across the board is equitable, in the sense that a person with a home, a single-family residence that might be assessed at $50,000, they're going to pay the same as somebody whose single-family residence is assessed at $2
And I can
million.
tell you that the residents will be much more displeased if they do it your way because of what they'll have to pay because of all the tax exemptions you knocked out of the budget. The fee's about to go,
As you just said, 1/3 is going to be paid by the top 20.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you take into account, what are the fees for all the nonprofits,
Well-
then that has to be passed on to the residents.
Well, assuming
This
it's,
was supposed to be fair and equitable across the board.
Ron, excuse me, Jim, I have a question. Does the, forgot my question. The fee has to be a separate fee and can only be used as a separate budget for the MS4 program, right?
Yes.
Now, if we tax and it goes into the general fund,
Can
then
go
it's not a separate
anywhere.
fee. I mean, it's not a separate budget.
but you can earmark.
How do
You
you, how do
can,
you,
you can earmark it under a separate
Yeah.
ordinance.
yeah, but how do you separate that out of the budget?
Well, then, the money that would be collected, it would be the same thing. It would just be, it would
Well,
just be
but,
the tax.
but wouldn't it be,
assessments do
well,
we
excuse
go
me,
under?
sorry, Joe. Excuse me, wouldn't it be more difficult to extract that out of the regular payment for the tax? Because it's all going to come in as one payment.
Well, that would be, you know, that's an interesting question you bring up, Mr. Wilson, because the tax collector would have to collect that because it would be a tax.
Right,
well, the
right.
second thing.
And then how do you get the separate, how do you make it a separate budget?
Well, that would show up on it would show up on your tax bill like that. For
You're-
instance, if it was 1 mil, that would be a 1 mil stormwater tax.
Okay, I see.
According to the IRS code, the tax invoice the people get, the card we get every year, would have to have a line item on it.
Right.
That identifies, that portion of additional tax that's being devoted to.
What
your
does
stormwater
1 mil
management fund.
represent as far as the tax?
2.5?
1.5?
About 2.3 million.
2.3
2.3?
approximately.
Okay, so we're
2.4,
still short.
2.3.
So to your
So
point,
you have to
Mr.
go
Brett-
1.5 mils?
So yeah, 1.5 millage increase, which means a home that's assessed at $100,000
Or-
will pay $150 extra a year.
Or you could just take whatever the assessed value of the property is and multiply it by a percentage and come up with, that way.
That's not
What do you
people
do,
with
like the
lower
mall
assessed-
just got reassessed at a lower value, so everyone's having to pay them back money,
That,
right?
Well, as far as
Am
being
I-
equitable,
er-
well, but as far as being equitable to the residents, I think,
Yeah.
as far as if we do
Trying
the
to be
math,
fair.
if we do the math for a second, the 1.5 millage increase we would have to do on residents, that means if your home was worth $100,000 assessed value, you would pay $150. If your home was assessed at $200,000, you'd pay $300 a year extra, which is more than I believe, than what's being proposed.
Well, that's more equitable than your flat rate at $10 a month.
Well, it's more money for the residents. It's not, so it's not equitable in the sense as far as commercial
but they can-
properties
But they can
and.
deduct it from their taxes.
Yeah, but
though.
you're doubling the fee to the resident to make it tax deductible.
Make
So-
a tax benefit.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up a good
Well,
point that we
here-
can consider,
Here,
Mr. Brown.
the flat fee structure that you're proposing right now with this ordinance, what you're doing is you're creating another layer of administration and bureaucracy. And when you start this up, I mean, you're going to have startup costs, you're going to have administrative overhead. If you somehow work it into or relate it to the real estate tax, you've already got that infrastructure in place.
I still think there would need to be,
Administrative infrastructure, I should say.
yeah, but there still need to be a lot of changes, and this kind of goes back to Mr. Wright's point. You know, whether you have Public Works doing these things or a separate entity, they still have to be separate. You'll still have to hire the same amount of people to run this program.
Well, for the operations aspect, yeah. But I mean, I'm talking about the administrative overhead. You know, the invoicing, the delinquency that you mentioned in your ordinance, the accountability of all of that.
And that's
you
part of
know.
the billing structure through the COG.
Yeah.
Which would have to be billed at either way.
And the infrastructure would have to add either way in the proposals that we discussed with the tax folks as well.
But you have in-house personnel that are already doing invoicing. You already have a program in place.
It
for
was
collecting
It was
delinquencies.
proposed to
You
that
already-
piece of
Yes.
it, which also increased that infrastructure irrespective of their current capabilities. So
But you're not starting from the ground up, though.
You bring up a point, but we'd have to hire another
Okay.
person for the tax officer, at
Yeah.
least a part-time employee.
We did check that out.
But that was part of the review process.
All right. My final comment is that the ordinance or this program, since your permit does have an expiration date, I think your ordinance should also have a sunset clause.
I think that's a good
There was
idea.
a lady who mentioned it earlier, and I had it in my notes to also mention, if you folks aren't familiar with the Johnstown flood tax, I could see this becoming another Johnstown flood tax. If you're not familiar
Or the
with
state
it-
income tax.
Oh, was that supposed to be temporary,
Oh,
too?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay. Johnstown flood tax, the state passed a tax in 1936 to make repairs for the Johnstown flood. Project was wrapped up in 1942, and we're still paying it today.
You bring up a good point. I think
So-
that's something for council to consider when we vote on this, to add that language. But that'll be up to council's.
1977, yeah.
And maybe the sunset clause should include a referendum for renewal.
Another thing to consider.
So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Georgiana Woodall.
Good evening, Georgiana Woodhall. I'd like to know who's responsible for the maintenance of the catch basins and for the pipes on State Route 130?
Now or then?
What do you mean now or then? For the
Well, I
last
mean,
30
The
years?
MS4 people are going to be in charge of it. Who's in charge of it now? Public Works.
No, state.
Oh, it
No,
must
I'm
be.
saying
That's
who's
state highway.
whose
State.
responsibility is Route 130?
And
State.
dot.
The state.
PennDOT.
Okay, but I was told that it is the responsibility of the municipality of Monroeville for any pipes that go under any state road in the municipality of Monroeville of a law that goes back to the 1940s.
If there are pipes.
There are pipes.
If there are,
If you're talking our storm structure, if any storm sewers that go under state roads are
I'm
from
talking
their-
about Route
from their
1.
entity, it's their storm source.
if the water's
Okay,
being collected on their road.
There's a state law that states, and I don't have the information, but I will get it from Mr. Markosik's office, that states that the municipality of Monroeville is responsible for any of the pipes, stormwater pipes, that go under the state roads.
If you get that language
And,
for
well, I'm not
us-
sure why Mr. Atcher.
I have it,
could-
Georgiana,
You have it?
absolutely.
Okay, would you familiarize the council with that, and would you get me a copy of it?
We've had meetings about it.
We've had meetings.
I'm thinking, I don't know if Tim was here yet, it might have been on there.
Basically, it started when we redid Northern Pike in 2014. We were informed by PennDOT that we had an agility program with them where we plow certain state roads and we get money from it, from the Commonwealth and also from the county. Well, in fact, this is the final year of it, in which we use that money that we get, let's say it's $20,000, I think it's more than that, $20,000 from the Commonwealth each year for plowing their roads.
I'm not talking about plowing roads, I'm talking
Well,
about
this
the
is
catch
answering-
basins.
This is answering your question.
Okay.
Okay? So through the course of paving Northern Pike, we were informed in 2014 about what you're talking about. So part of the paving of Northern Pike, our Public Works Department did put in some storm sewer pipes on Northern Pike. Now, with that being done, we contacted Senator Brewster's office, discussed with him, as Paul's alluding to. We talked to Representative Markosik's office. There seems to be some ambiguity, is what I'll say, in whether it goes over into the legal realm of whether or not we are responsible. We did it to get the road done, because we knew that there was water coming off of the hillside out on Northern Pike, and we weren't going to argue the point. We just did it because we had the agility program in place. We're, okay, fine, we will not receive $150,000 over the next 4 or 5 years for plowing your roads. Okay, it was easy to do that, and we did that. But I mean, I'll have to defer to Mr. Ratcher. I mean, I don't know if legally we are required. I just don't know, Georgiana.
Okay, well, the catch basins on 130 have been a problem, they've been a problem I've been coming up here for over 30 years. And I have minutes from July of 2009. You know, I'll be more prepared for the council meeting next week, because I've had an issue, and I know I called you, Mr. Little, in January. I had Mike Adams at my house. I'm not going to get into detail about it.
No, I'm aware of it.
Okay, you're aware of it.
Mr. Butler was there from the Commonwealth, from PennDOT.
Okay, and it's a matter of not just catch basins, it's a matter of the pipes that run under Route 130. And, you know, I'm all about paying my fair share, but I'm not going to pay you a fee to tell me, again, that it's a state road, it's a state issue, and we can't help you. And when I hear words thrown out like leaning property, blight, that's a huge concern to me. Not only me, you know, but a lot of other people. And, you know, I took the time over the weekend, because I've heard all about fees before. I discussed fees. I went and read 105 pages of minutes from the Monroeville Growth Alliance. And then I went and read over 100 pages from the Redevelopment Authority, and about fees, about traffic impact fees. And, you know, I know that Mr. Harvey, Mr. Wright, Mr. Wilson, you know, we were all in the Redevelopment Authority at the same time. And there was a lot of concern about blight. And I have the minutes, Mr. Harvey, you know, I know there were properties that you were concerned about. Dunkin' Donuts, Eastmont Cleaners, King's Hotel.
Where's going here? If we could stick to
This is
control.
tied in, King's Hotel,
Go ahead.
okay?
If you could tie it into that.
Okay, all
pollution
these
control.
properties were properties that were considered blighted, who had issues, not just with stormwater, some with pollution. And we were looking for ways to come up with some fees. There were traffic impact fees that were discussed at the time. And when you look at those properties today, businesses came in here. They developed those areas. They
were cleaned up.
They were, look at them today, Mr. Harvey.
They were cleaned
They
up.
were done with no fees whatsoever as far as that. They came in, they complied with our local ordinance, they complied with the state ordinance, they complied with the federal ordinances without any.
Suggesting we can get this storm sewer under control without imposing any fees at all on our budget, our current budget? Is
Linda,
that what you're suggesting? I'm just trying to
I'm
see if you're
I'm
putting
not,
the two and
like I
two
said,
together.
Well, what I'm saying is, all that was done without fees.
you are
And,
suggesting
developers come in here, they're willing to invest in our
Jana,
community.
that Dunkin' Donuts property and everything over there was cleared and cleaned out by the federal government for using almost $2 million worth of money. It wasn't free.
Well, no, it wasn't free, but we weren't charged
But you said it was
additional
free.
fees. Well,
Well, your point, Ms. Woodhull, is that the sites, they are responsible for water detention currently under our ordinance. However, that would not address our infrastructure on our roadways that we own.
But a lot of them are going above and beyond. As far
Correct,
as,
but
let me just
where
give you an
that water
example.
goes from those sites, though, it goes into our storm system.
Correct.
And that's what we're trying to address.
Correct. I understand that.
So I don't know how new development would fix our storm sewer system.
Well,
That's what you're, I'm just trying to follow.
you know,
I'm not trying, I'm just trying to
like,
follow what
as
you're trying to say.
You have to look back in order to understand what's going on right now. And, I appreciate all the work that everybody's done here, but the way this came about in a way, even though it's been 2 years that you went to Mount Lebanon, there are so many people that did not know about this ordinance coming up. I know that because I took the article and I just went to the businesses.
There was no sense in advertising the ordinance, Georgiana, unless we had one. And until we educated ourselves on all this stuff and met and figured out what Monroeville would need and had the thing put into English language, there was absolutely no sense in telling everybody, hey, there's an ordinance coming. They would say, about what? We'd say, I don't know.
And this committee, this ad hoc committee was formed at our reorganization meeting in January.
Right. I understand that.
I mean, we wanted to have some facts to answer, hopefully answer most of the questions. And even still, we find ourselves having to tweak the wording.
And the suggestion from tonight, it sounds that the council will be tabling this on Tuesday to give us more time to discuss it and more time for public input and more time for public education.
And in the meantime, I wanted to get answers as far as the, what you're responsible for on that state road.
Very good. Thank you.
you.
Gary DiLorenzo, please. You state your name for the record.
My name is
Don't-
Gary.
Don't touch,
Microphone.
don't touch.
That's illegal.
Jesus.
What a way to get started, huh? Good
out,
evening.
Gary.
Hello, everyone.
You're going to be assessed more on this.
Hey, Gary,
That.
up above your head.
Bad
Okay,
things will happen
okay.
to you.
Don't touch the microphone.
I won't. Okay. My name is Gary DiLorenzo. I'm a citizen of Monroeville.
floor is
Just
yours,
for the
Gary.
record, I live in Colonial Drive, and I am the chairman of the Monroeville Municipal Authorities Board. And I had some ideas and some questions that I was going to ask council, but I decided to change my slant a little bit, if you don't mind. It's a late evening. I'm going to try to wrap this up quickly, just to give you some thoughts that you can think about. When I look at this situation related to the MS4 consent decree, it's really a problem. It's a problem on how can we as a municipality, from a strategic standpoint, control pollution, reduce flooding. What can be done? It's a project. Anybody that has a project management background understands the triple constraints. What's the scope of the project? What's the timeline of the project? And what are the costs incurred to make that project completed towards success. Scope ties into boundaries, objectives, that type of thing. In order to go through this project, how do you get started? You do research. Who are the stakeholders? You have business entities that you need to work with, government entities. You have operational environment, the engineering department for infrastructure, people, equipment. On the financial side, cost. Where do you find the cost for this? There's a variety of areas. The citizens involved, the property owners, the businesses. There's a lot of stakeholders. You do research to understand and gain knowledge on how do you solve the problem. And then where do you go? You analyze the options that you have based on the knowledge that you've gained. What are the options for us to meet the objectives of MS4? What are our options as far as how we can meet the demands of the government, but minimizing the impact to property owners? We know it's a bad scenario, whether it's a fee or a tax or whatever, but how do you manage all of the stakeholders' interests so you still meet those goals? And then once you analyze that information from a research standpoint, you start looking at optimum solutions. Okay? Those optimum solutions eventually evolve into some generalized plan that shows you where those options are that you've researched. From my perspective, I am very, very enthusiastic that it appears that Council is planning on tabling a vote on this ordinance because I believe it's too premature. Let's spend a little bit of time, if you can, to do some problem solving from a project management standpoint, scope, time, and cost constraints, to look at options. Now let me wrap this up. I have two observations.
God, Gary.
Watch out.
Sorry
thank
about
you.
that. Thank you. I have
Thank
two
you, Joe.
observations.
Thank you, Joe.
This
Thank
one
you, Joe.
slide that says current regulations, if you look at the bottom, from a municipality standpoint, we need pollutant reduction plans. A plan is an approach. A plan is a schedule.
We
A plan
have
is a
that.
direction.
We have,
Okay,
We have that,
Okay, okay,
Gary.
so with that plan.
We do have that,
Okay?
okay?
You do have that
Yeah,
plan?
yes.
If you do have that plan,
Yes.
that would be worthwhile to share with the
We
constituents
will, but,
on the website.
yes.
Well, that's why
We have to wait.
That's why we
that-
hired the engineer.
Yes.
Okay.
To give you an overall, we still have to pass the ordinance before you can have
Well-
more information.
I believe the ordinance is a byproduct of your plan,
Yeah,
but that's my viewpoint. Okay? My other thought is, would it be worthwhile to have a copy of the MS4 mandate published on our website? Because, I mean, is it that thick? It's a lot of detail.
the permit's 26 pages. We said that that could be done, but not the
Permit-
entire
the permit,
mandate.
yeah, it does
Not the
be-
entire mandate.
oh, well, I thought he meant the federal regulation.
Well, whatever the permit is, on whatever the expectations that we need to do
The permit.
as a municipality, which is the permit, I'm sorry, I used the wrong term.
Mr. Little, can we have that put up on the website,
I already
please?
have it in my notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think we could also probably have any kind of website links to the EPA that maybe address these issues. If we could dig through the actual,
I'll also make sure that the library also has it set up as
Exactly,
well in
the library
place, so that
has
we have
this and the senior
maybe identify it so it's a little more easily available since it's an interesting topic as opposed to just.
If
being
you
set up to the side.
understand as on the website or as the citizens what the permit is, and as we also have an opportunity to look at those overall plans from a project management standpoint, I think it'll get everyone in this room and the citizens a little bit better understanding of the challenges that we have here, so they can be a little bit more receptive to some options that you're considering.
Well, some of the options aren't options.
They're
Feds are
mandates.
making us do it.
well, I mean, I guess maybe to Gary's point, and perhaps, Paul, if your department over the next, if we're going to table this on Tuesday, so maybe over the next month, before next month's meeting, if we could have maybe our top, whatever you want to say, 15, 10, 20 projects that we know that are problem areas. We know this is a problem area, and this is how much we
I know, but I didn't expect.
plan that it's going to cost.
Does our
Perhaps it's
engineers
something we
have that
could-
information?
Gary, let me just say this. You sound like a college professor.
He is.
I am.
I know.
I am. All right.
Everything
Did I come across like?
everything that you spoke of, we've already done.
Yes.
When you say we should do all this, we have done all that. It is done.
But perhaps this is something that
Okay.
we need to
Can that
tie.
be shared with us?
Okay, so let's put it back into your world. It's very similar to the sanitary sewer that you had to put in place. So it's very similar. They're very parallel to each
Right.
other, except you're dealing with sanitary sewers, we're dealing with storm sewers.
Right.
Okay? So everything that you speak of has been done.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Now, I'm not questioning that it has not been done. I believe the observation in the room tonight is, through most of the questions of the citizens, they're unknown, or this information, this plan, is unknown to them. This research that you have done is unknown to them to justify how you're going to pay for this. So if that can be positioned maybe out on a website or positioned somewhere for the community on all this homework you've done.
What did
I'll
the
use word homework.
presentation show you, Gary?
Pardon me?
What did the presentation show you? Not enough?
From my perspective, the presentation, I think it was good background information on the regulation that came out, okay, the MS4 requirements. I'll go to, this one caught my interest on the budgeting side. I can really empathize where you're at on this one. What was the basis for having storm sewer assets of $36 million? What was the basis for that?
That's, the federal government says we have to spend $7.5 million annually
No,
on
but-
getting rid of the sediment. Is
No,
that correct, Paul?
But the assessment of
The assessment of our, are we saying the assessment of our existing system is assessed at 38 million? And we have an operational budget of 26,000 annually to maintain that?
No. That's
No.
what we have now, Gary.
Correct.
That's
You're
what we
right.
have now.
Yes.
That's my point.
Yes.
Right.
That's my
You're correct.
point.
You're correct.
So if
You are
that's
correct.
true,
You are
if
correct.
that is
That is
true.
true.
Yes.
So there's the challenge in itself.
Correct.
For you to have financially.
Yes.
For this
Gary, you're
MS4
right on that.
scenario.
Yes.
Which brings me back, if you really look at this project that you've been looking at for strategically for a couple years now, okay, was there any observation or looking into possibly a bond, since this is a capital project?
We don't want to go into
It's
debt
a
for this,
never-ending
Gary.
project. It's not like something
This
you
is,
buy once.
wait,
We haven't
a
taken up-
you don't see this as a temporary endeavor?
No.
So this is going to be
No.
not only a development effort operationally to put in an infrastructure for the MS4 requirements.
have to
but what's
maintain
in their
it.
place? So you're going to maintain it.
Then you
Yes.
have to
So you're going to
maintain it.
maintain it. And
Correct.
that's going to be one entity, possibly one authority that's
Yeah.
ongoing.
Gary, you're
For
barking up the
duration.
wrong tree, my friend.
That is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he's bringing up some good
Yes.
points.
I use the example as the road paving project. We pave your street today. By the time we get done with the rest of the streets in Monroeville, yours needs repaved.
But that road already exists. It's not a new road.
Well, these
And I'm
storm
trying to
sewers already
separate a
exist.
capital endeavor that's new
These
versus
already
an
exist,
operational
Gary.
endeavor.
Come on.
Oh, yeah.
What?
You're taking this too long. You're
What?
making too big of a deal out of it. Let the engineers handle it. That's why we paid them.
Gary, can I explain?
Sure.
If I may?
Come on.
So,
Yeah, please.
Okay, the MS4 that's in there, the 6 minimum control measures,
Uh-huh.
those are ongoing. So that first came into effect much before 2018. Those are ongoing. So even though the permit ends in
Yeah.
2023, there will be a new permit almost.
Can I ask you a question based on a comment that you made on the, you said.
Gary,
that-
if you-
Gary, face this way.
Face
so-
Oh, I'm
so
sorry,
I can
I'm
hear you,
sorry,
so we can all
I'm
hear you.
sorry.
Don't touch it.
I'm sorry. Did you,
Please.
I believe you made a comment that some new development efforts have already been addressing
So-
some of the sediment reductions. Did you say that? I believe you did.
That's not what I
Oh.
meant, if that's
Oh,
what I said.
Okay,
The new development meets the stormwater ordinance requirements.
Okay.
The 10% sediment reduction is what is in the permit. That is the new thing that is in the permit.
would there be an opportunity for our new development to satisfy the need on the sediment
Not
reduction?
for the full
If-
10%, no.
No, I agree, but if you have a percentage of it, isn't that a success story that we share, that we're already making progress with our plans for MS4? That's my observation. I know I'm getting deep, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of information that I just wanted to share with the group. I just wanted to take a step back from a planning standpoint, okay? If all this information can be shared through your website with the constituents, and people have knowledge on what you're thinking, I think it has a lot of value. And wherever you propose on how these fees, taxes, wherever the costs come from, people have a background information on where you came from.
Thank you.
Gary, do you list all the projects that the authority is doing?
On our website, okay, we try to keep it current.
Do you list for the next 5 years? Do you have all the projects you're doing for the next 5 years?
We're actually working on that activity right now, Paul, and I'll tell you what we're doing on our side. On our side, we're actually working with each foreman to identify what are the operational plans and the capital budgets, projects that we need to manage for the next 2 to 3 years. That's a basis for our operational budget for 19. And we're going to basically identify some capital projects.
Because you've run out of bond money.
That's my point. And that's my point. I
Right,
don't know where your
because-
bond scenario is, but I thought I'd
Right,
ask.
but that's why you're doing what you're doing now.
Right.
And this is why we're doing what we're doing, because we're being mandated to do this.
Very similar
Correct.
to us, mandates.
But
where to-
you are now having to find out to budget, to do a correct budget down at the Water Authority, as we discussed down there, because you don't have the bond money to do your projects any longer.
We have a little bit of bond money
But-
back, but
but
I
you
get your
know
point.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Okay, without us throwing this ball back and forth, that is the reason you're doing what you're just saying now to Mr. Yugas, is you're talking to the foreman, you're talking about the projects, you're talking about the cost, because you do not have the bond money free and available to use on every one of those projects. We don't have the money either.
But if I could interject real briefly, because I want to make sure I'm hearing
Yeah.
you, Gary, and maybe what could help is, so we will have, there are projects, there's work that's been done. This committee's been meeting for over a year. Our engineering department's been doing a tremendous amount of work on it. Our outside engineer's been doing a tremendous amount of work on it.
Yeah.
I think we need to maybe get some of that extra information
Well-
out as far as maybe some of the top projects, or maybe like, once, if this goes through and if it gets voted on and we all agree on how to do it, what is day one? What are the first steps? What are the things that we tackle as a municipality? Maybe those are the kind of things that we need to put out there so everybody gets an idea of the scope of things.
Right. I follow you. We're in a very similar situation. All I'm saying is, we're doing, and getting back to your point, from our operational budget and our capital projects with our foreman, those will be posted. But it brings us back to both organizations, that you have these decrees and these government regulations that you're trying to meet with the resources that you have, okay, and you're trying to find options. All I'm saying from this meeting today, what I've heard from the constituents, the citizens, is that if you can share more information with them out on your website related to these plans, this research, this analysis that you've already done to justify how this will be developed and implemented, I think it'll go a long way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Gary,
Thank
you
you,
know
Gary.
one other thing. Yeah, I'm sure if the sanitary sewer mandates are met, years from now, we'll be paying more than you do for a car payment now, just for your storage, right?
Correct.
By the time we meet all those mandates.
Let me
That is
let's
a
just-
true statement.
Let me just make an offer.
Thank you, Mr.
One of
Dunn. That
our
is
future,
true.
one of our future municipal authority meetings, you can come and talk to us on our challenges with the El Casan.
Yes.
Consent decree. And then you can push it back
No,
on
nothing
me.
against you guys, but I'm saying, once the DEP mandates are met,
Yeah.
it's gonna be like a mortgage to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
We're all going through it.
Yeah,
We're
we
all
are.
going through it.
Yes,
We're
we
all
You're all
going
going,
through it.
you're absolutely right. Thank you.
I'm thinking a whole.
Gary, I just want to clear something up that's in the PowerPoint. You can sit down.
Oh, okay.
Relax, Gary.
Please.
There's a $26,000 figure in there for stormwater, all right? And our budget under stormwater maintenance right now for 2018 is $157,000. Now, what that $26,000 represents is for purchasing things out of operation for, inlets, some pipe here and there, and that's for commodities that's in operation. In the past years, and you brought up the word bond money, in the past years, Monroeville, let's say 10 years, in the past 10 years, any kind of stormwater work that was done with bond money. Glenwood, for instance, the big project we did over in Glenwood. That was all done with bond money that was floated. The last time a bond was floated, I think, in Monroeville was in 2007. And we had bond money left over, which it's just about dissipated right now. Talking about floating a bond to pay for this. You float a bond, $36 million, that's the asset. So let's use that figure, $36 million. You float a bond for $36 million. You're going to have the underwriters, it's like buying a house. Every time you float a bond, just like when you buy a house, everybody is in your pocket. The underwriters are going to get a portion of that. The bond counsel is going to get a portion of that. And I'll just estimate out of $36 million, maybe about $2 million. You have all kind of overhead costs. So floating a bond, you're talking about $3 million every year that you have to pay for this. $36 million and you're floating the bond. That is not, bonds are more expensive, even though the interest rates are low on bonds right now. I would not recommend that to council at all, because you float a bond, our debt service right now is $3.2 million. It's 10% of our general fund, which is too high. And I've been saying that in my budget messages for the last 6-7 years. It's too high. We haven't floated a bond for a while. We've been on a pay-as-you-go basis in order to keep our debt service down. You float a bond for $36 million, your debt service is going to more than double, and guess what you're going to have to do in order to pay it? Raise taxes. So floating a bond is not the way to go. I just wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Little. And folks, I need to call a 5-minute recess for our stenographer.
Thank you.
And she needs to get more paper and rest her fingers. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
I have to say, I have a family obligation.
those to you?
Okay, folks, we are back from recess, and we still do have the floor open for public comment on the pollution control and flood reduction program. Just to reiterate some things, we will not be voting on this topic this evening. There's also the consent from council that they'll be tabling this item on Tuesday. It will not be voted on, and we'll have more time to discuss this. There's discussion time at next Tuesday's meeting, and also there'll be discussion at the October council work session and the regular council meeting. So if there's anyone else that wants to make comment on this item at this time.
Alyssa Beck, Monroeville, Pennsylvania. So everybody's going to get a laugh out of this, okay? So just get ready, okay? So I brought this up many years ago in the city of Pittsburgh when the consent decree came out, and it was a room of 200 plus or 300 people, and I said it there so I can say it here. I'm going to address the engineers here. Have composting toilets been put into the plan? Can we take care of our own, you fill in the blank?
That would be done through the sewer, water and sewer authority, not through our stormwater.
Okay. Is there any connection, even though we say it's all disconnected, is there any connection?
That would be a topic for the water authority, municipal authority.
And he just left.
Okay, well, most people just left because it's late and we had a
Yep.
5-minute break. So why, my question is really, why the rush? Why is there such a rush? Why is there so much information but that has not been shared? I'm reiterating what the gentleman just said. I would respectfully ask that that big giant map be put as an exhibit in the lobby area, along with all of the information that you have, so citizens that do not have access to the internet can come in and look at it, and folks that do have access to the internet but that don't like to stare at computer screens for long periods of time can come in and look. And maybe some community members might meet each other in the lobby and have a chance to discuss the issues. If there's two separate departments established, how will the municipality of Monroeville establish a distinction between what is stormwater work and what is public works work? That seems really complicated
No,
to
one
me.
will be
No, it's not.
very
Actually, very
specific,
simple.
stormwater, and it's already
That's already been discussed.
very much demarcated.
And so we'll look forward to seeing what that discussion is. Best management practices, bioretention. I'm wondering from the engineers if there's been any discussion of people's landscapes. If people have permeable landscapes, you know, are they gonna get credit? Now, I would love for UPMC to pay something at some point, somewhere. But the fact is that UPMC, that hospital on the corner, has been very responsible. And it's really fun. If you go there when it rains, I've stood there on that corner and watched what happens. The water goes right into the earth. You know, what can I say? They've been responsible citizens. They've got a gargantuan bioretention pond. They're not even going to have to come here. They're going to work with Mr. Ratcher behind the scenes, and they're not going to want to pay. I mean, there's a lot on that list of the
They still
top.
have
That's
a
not
lot of
true.
parking lot that causes a lot of runoff.
Listen, they were invited to the top 20 business.
They were invited.
And there'll be a public appeal process
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Or a private appeal board.
So
So
I'm
there's
just
not going to be any
curious.
behind the scenes. I really want to clear that up.
I hope that you're right, Linda.
No, I am right. We're
Good.
not going to allow any behind the scenes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm very
deals
glad.
being made.
Awesome. Engineers, how many miles reduction with implementation of permaculture principles, with the requirement of permeable pavement for driveways instead of repaving, permeable pavement, required rain barrels? How much reduction in this $3 million a year? I mean, can we look at some simple solutions and see some calculations? You know, I'm just curious. Hey, I've been up here saying that for a long time. Why the rush? Why the rush? It sounds like there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from this monetarily. If it costs
Well, who?
$3 million a year, there's a lot of people. That's great. It's great to pay people. But it's also great to look at some simple solutions and put it into the
Well,
equation.
but $3 million doesn't go to salaries. I mean, there certainly is a lot of work to be done, and these projects cost a lot of money. It's not just employment.
So the paradigm, the existing paradigm, that's true. And so I'm just asking us to look in a
There's
slightly
deadlines in
different
the permit.
direction.
What you call a rush is there's deadlines in the permit. We have to be at a certain place at a certain time.
And are deadlines parallel to the city of Pittsburgh?
City of Pittsburgh hasn't even applied for this.
No, they're our permit. We have a 5-year
Why,
permit.
why did we apply so soon? Why
Well,
can't
we were ready.
Why can't we go on the coattails of
Why
Pittsburgh?
would you not, we don't want to be on their coattails. We did,
We're
we
going to
did
be
our own.
original. We're going to be original, and we're going to.
Mount Lebanon's already done.
They've been doing it for 5 years.
Plum's already done.
And
We're behind. The way I look
Pittsburgh
at
is
I see.
different because their stormwater and sanitary is the same sewer system. They're a different situation.
That's a whole other animal.
Yep.
Okay, well, those were my questions that came up. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yes, the DEP, yes, Dr. Beck, yeah, the DEP came to us to clarify that. The DEP came and told us what we have to do and the deadlines of what we have to do. And then the permit then dictates the time frame. So I'll still leave it open.
Lois Drumheller again, I signed in. I'm looking at the top 20 fee payers, and I'm wondering how confident you are in the individual listed payers here. I know they're by parcel count and how much their fee is per year. I made a little check over some of them here. Are you fairly confident about these being your top 20? Because
I'm sorry, so, Lois, so,
Jamie?
if I could.
Speak.
So, Lois, are you asking, is the figure, are we confident with the figure? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Or the
actually I
name.
am, because of the, they're covering, I think you said about a third of the cost. And that is hopefully, because I'd like this done just like everybody else would. It's a matter of how you count your numbers and what you're counting on. And when you take a look at the property owners and go down the list here, I just made a little tick out of a couple of them here. CBL, of course, is the first on this list, who owns or manages the Monroeville Mall. And I'm not trying to be negative about malls in general, but if you take a look across the nation, you'll see that they probably are on a downward trend. It doesn't make their land any less or more permeable. It just means that if you're bankrupt, then you have to count on, the fiscal ability, okay? I worry about that because of living here for 20 years and just in my 20 year, seeing what has gone on with that mall. The next one I'm looking at here is Terra Capital Associates, which owns Tech One Park, and I think that's mostly, isn't that Mr. Liberatore, who still lives in New York? And I remember him taking 30 minutes going on and on during, yeah, you remember? I do believe Tech Park doesn't really have too much back there. They got a lot of beautiful buildings that are unoccupied, and I think Bechtel is the only one out there. Am I wrong? Only one on that property, that huge property. So that's another concern I have because of the air of Mr. Liberatore, for one. The other one underneath that is the Westinghouse facility, LS-REF4. And I think there might be someone there, but it's the same thing that, you don't have Westinghouse there. Who do you have? What's the viability of the ability to pay based on that land? Then you go down to UPMC. And I think that has already been discussed here because the East Hospital went up. I know what they did. And I know that, like my little 950 square foot on 20,000 square foot of property, you go across the street and you find a real big house and compare it to mine. I did more. We did more for our house. That we have rain gardens and double now, rain barrels. And the number of things that we did for the house renovation.
So I'm looking at, don't I get credit? Well, that's what UPMC is going to be looking at too. Because they certainly, went through all of those motions to ensure their stormwater runoff, underground retention, release, and all that stuff they did for that corner, that horrible corner. Well, how nicely they fixed that. Then there's the Monroeville Plaza. That is the limited partnership. That's the Gander Mountain Giant Eagle that is no more. And they've got a dollar store there. And they have maybe the other thing. I'm looking at the fiscal ability, Ron, for them to pay this. Okay? And then there's Jameson Lane, where Bechtel is. Okay? So I'm asking again how confident you are of being able to count on that, because you've got to find a way. There's got to be a way. You're working very hard on that way. I don't necessarily think you should blame the fact that you can't have a bond. When I was on council and we had $440,000 that was part of the capital improvement plan, that's why I asked you about that. I couldn't find your current one. There was not only people bidding to try to get things covered, which included MS4, but there was I was fortunate to see that Glenwood was covered. And I'll bet you there are plenty of people that have not moved away from there, and they're paying their taxes, and that was part of that bond, that last bond. So you can't just blame the bond situation for saying you're digging into areas in your budget that you shouldn't. That's a budget process you have to be responsible for, and I really do think you need to consider the bond as what you do to control this, because
Lois,
after it's done,
ask Tim,
after it's done, Mr. Mayor,
Lois,
after all that is said and done, Mr. Mayor,
ask Tim what our,
after all
what
that
our
is said
debt is
and done,
today.
Mr. Mayor, I am directing myself to
He
you.
already answered that, Tom.
You have to consider how confident you are, okay? I'm pretty sure everybody's willing to do their fair share. They just want it to be fairly estimated.
Tim, what is our debt today in bonds?
Well, our liability, if I'm not mistaken, is 26 million, 22 million, I can't remember which one, but our
Okay.
debt service,
Okay.
what we pay every year.
If we do a bond issue for 36 million, that would put us up to what, 58 million?
Well, yeah, it would be 50-something million.
So,
Our debt
so
service-
how fiscally responsible would we be if we did that?
We would not.
Well, it's how fiscally responsible. You would be funding the MS4 program, so you'd be responsible doing that. However, you'd be paying down on that debt service for the next 20 years, which could skyrocket, it would double very easily. So
Right,
then,
and our annual debt, or our annual payment would be approximately 5.8 million?
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
It'd be about 6 million. You'd have to raise taxes to pay for it.
right, thank you.
Way more than this fee is going to cost.
Mr. Mintz, if you can state your name for the record.
Yes, hi, I'm David Mintz, and briefly, I'd just like to comment. Ms. Gatos and I spoke briefly during the break. I appreciate that, just to help me answer my question. But I just wanted to mention on the one slide on the presentation that talks about BMPs, which are best management practices, the idea of slow it down, spread it out, soak it in. That may be some of our most inexpensive ways of doing this. And just as has been said many times, so I don't have to repeat, some of our questions are basically because we don't know all the things that you've already worked on and you're planning ahead, and we will see those soon, I'm sure. But I just wanted to make sure, even in the slide itself, it says, it mentions design things like detention basins, but also as well as non-engineered approaches like protecting open space to manage stormwater. That may be, some of our most inexpensive ways of doing it, and I was just wondering, without knowing that you don't have the exact details, but I just wanted to know, it's something like protecting open space in Monroeville land, Monroeville municipality-owned land. Is that already planned ahead? Are there plans for ways of doing that maybe hadn't been thought of before? Is that going to be part of the plan, protecting more open space from being developed in parks, expanding any parks, doing anything to protect open land that already absorbs the water as nature would do? As well as other things on Monroeville public land. I understand, as we spoke during the break, that you can't necessarily mandate a private person to put a green roof on their house, which I know absorbs a lot of water and would really help this. But on maybe municipal buildings, or rain gardens or swales on municipal, whether it's at the public works area or other Monroeville, like the right here where we're standing right now in this, around this building, things that we could do that, and I understand, as I spoke to Ms. Gates about, there's a lot of broken infrastructure that needs to be fixed pretty darn quickly, I mean, in the beginning. But a lot of the other things that can be done concurrently, it really wouldn't take away from our work to fix a broken catch basin to also be concurrently protecting some open land or doing something right here at the municipal building or some other public land in Monroeville. So I'm just wondering, I want to make sure that this is the chance. This is our once-in-a-lifetime chance to be doing this, that the green infrastructure versus what's often called, I'm sure the engineers talk about gray infrastructure, the pipes that move the water from here to there, rather than the green infrastructure, which
I think after this project gets started, thoughts like that'll happen more and more.
Good, yeah,
And,
yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion.
Sure, but is it already in the works, the stuff that you're going to?
Yes.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Getting
She's
this
shaking her
implemented
head
to get-
yes.
Is there anything you could say that, like, just for the people at home that, on that?
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
So, yes, those BMPs include both.
Okay.
So, when you're looking at reducing sediment, preserving natural land isn't necessarily going to reduce sediment, right? Because that's already part of the baseline. That doesn't mean that it's not important. That doesn't mean that it, it definitely helps with stormwater management. But in developing these BMPs specifically for the pollution reduction plan, DEP has a number of BMPs that they vet. I don't have the list with me. Jamie, do you know some of them off?
Just your general rain gardens, bio retention
Right.
areas, permeable pavers. There is actually a list, and I think I talked to Dr. Beck about this on the PRP plan when we were talking about the PRP plan. So DEP has a table called PMP effectiveness table, and that's basically your menu of what they consider applicable. And some things that you might consider green or things like that aren't really on that table. So we kind of have to live within the guidelines of DEP's regulating us. We have to follow their rules. We have to choose off their menu, and we have to calculate the effectiveness as they tell us to do it.
To what extent can we do this on, as we were, once again, I'll refer to our talk in the break, Ms. Gatos was saying, we can't necessarily mandate that a private person in their private property do any of these things, but to what extent of the things you just listed there, which were great, can we do as a municipality? Just like to refer back to the oil and gas drilling, we decided on public land in Monroeville that wasn't going to be allowed in the parks. As I was told by the council, if I go to a park and see somebody, whether they were doing seismic testing or oil drilling in the middle of the park, and they say, "Oh, we're allowed," I was told, of course, they're lying because we deemed that not legal. So we can do that on public land. We can do some of these things you're talking about in some of our local parks that maybe have a lot more runoff than they need to have.
And that is an area that is very much focused on in the PRP, using the municipal-owned land.
Right,
because
great.
that's one step out of the equation,
Sure.
right? So it's looking at what BMPs you can install that get the biggest bang for your buck.
Right.
So it's considering the green alternatives.
Right.
There's a good place for green.
And one last point on it, I'll promise, is wetlands themselves. I taught, just to throw this out, I taught conservation education for 15 years. Wetlands are one of the best aspects of flood control as a sponge that naturally not only soaks up the water to prevent flooding, but also pollution control. If you've ever been out to St. Vincent's College, some people know about this, where the Steelers train every year, of course, but they have experimental wetlands out there to catch the abandoned mine drainage, the iron that comes out of the abandoned mines in the area, and it collects that by hitting the reeds, the cattails, just the physical aspect of the water flowing through them. It dissipates out. Yeah, right, exactly. We have it, right, exactly. We have that right here in Boyce Park, too. I forgot about that because that's pretty new. Some of those kind of ideas going to be managed. So we put in wetlands where they don't exist now in an area that maybe is just underutilized anyway. And is
Those are all things that will be considered.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great ideas.
Again, getting back to that table, though, right?
Yeah.
We have to use BMPs that the DEP.
Well, they would hopefully
Recognize.
recognize the things that we've been
Because
talking about today.
yes.
I mean, they're the ones who would know that, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are in the plans that we're going to eventually see soon, like you said, it's going to be published. And since it's going to be tabled, we'll have another month to see some of that. Thank you so much for your work and help.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
I will leave the floor open. Last chance, we're going to close that portion of the meeting and move over to our agenda setting meeting